Givarada Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivarada Janavallabha Girivarada Yashodanandana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Rajajana Ranjana Yamuna Vanachari Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Kunja Vihari Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Kaviraj Vitarya Stota Satish Nitrimad Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Kaviraj Vitarya Stota Satish Nitrimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita. He also held kirtan in the storefront. Like the lectures, the kirtans were serious, but they were not so formal. Prabhupada was lenient during kirtan. Visitors would bring harmoniums, wooden flutes, guitars, and they would follow the melody or create their own improvisations. Someone brought an old string bass and bow, and an inspired guest could always pick up the bow and play along. Some of the boys had found the innards of an upright piano waiting on the curb with someone's garbage, and they had brought it to the temple and placed it near the entrance. During a kirtan, free-willing guests would run their hands over the wires, creating strange vibrations. Robert Nelson, several weeks back, had brought a large cymbal that now hung from the ceiling, dangling close by the Swami's dais. But there was a limit to the extravagance. Sometimes when a newcomer picked up the kartals and played them in a beat other than the standard 1-2-3, Swamiji would ask one of the boys to correct him, even at the risk of offending the guest. Prabhupada led the chanting and drummed with one hand on a small bongo. Even on this little bongo drum, he played Bengali Mridanga rhythms, so interesting that a local Conga drummer used to come just to hear. The Swamiji gets in some good licks. The Swami's kirtans were new high, and the boys would glance at each other with widening eyes and shaking heads as they responded to his chanting, comparing it to their previous drug experiences and signaling each other favorably. This is great. It's better than LSD. Hey man, I'm really getting high on this. Prabhupada encouraged their newfound intoxication. A manifesto of these kirtans, he was as maestro of these kirtans, he was also acting expertly as guru. Lord Chaitanya had said, quote, "There are no hard and fast rules for chanting the holy name," unquote. And Prabhupada brought the chanting to the Lower East Side just that way. A kindergarten of spiritual life. he once called a temple. Here he taught the ABCs of Krishna consciousness, lecturing from Bhagavad Gita and leading the group chanting of Hare Krishna. Sometimes after the final kirtan, he would invite those who were interested to join him for further talks in his apartment. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sarvasashabdipiyusa, Sarvavedaikasatpala, Sarvasiddhantaratnadya, Sarvalokaikudritprada, O nectar of the ocean of all scriptures, shingle of fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of precious gems of all conclusive truths, you're the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Kali Dvantadita, Aditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O nectar of the Supreme Lords of the Vedas, all Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you're the sun risen in the darkness of Kali, you're the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya, Prema Vakshiksharayate, Sarvada Sarvasevyaya, Sri Krishnaya Namostame. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You're Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando, Matsangin, Madguro, Manmahadana, Manishtaraka Madbhagya, Madananda Namostati. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhu tadayin, anidin chitakara, mujadajinma, prema hridkantarospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me, always appear in my heart and my voice of pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading from the 4th canto, chapter 25, entitled The Characteristics of Queen Puranjana, text number 36. Dishthyagato sipadaram te gramyam kaman abhi sase udvahishyami tam steham sobandhu bir arindama. Dishthyagato sipadaram te gramyan kaman abhi sase udvahishyami tam steham sobandhu bir arindama. Dishthyagato sipadaram te gramyam kamam abhi sase udvahishyami tam steham Swabandhu bir arindama. Word for word. Dishya, fortunately for me. Agata asi, you have come here. Bajram, all auspiciousness. Te, unto you. Gramyan, sensual. Kaman, desired, enjoyable objects. Abib sase, you want to enjoy. Udvahishyami, I shall supply. Tan, all of them. Te, unto you. Aham, I. Sabandhu, be with all my friends. Arimdama, O killer of the enemy. Translation. O killer of the enemy, you have somehow or other come here. This is certainly great fortune for me. I wish all auspicious things for you. You have a great desire to satisfy your senses, and all my friends and I shall try our best in all respects to fulfill your desires. Purport. The living entity comes down into this material world for sense gratification, and his intelligence, represented by the woman, gives him the proper direction by which he can satisfy his senses to their best capacity. In actuality, however, intelligence comes from the Supersoul, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he gives full capacity to the living entity who has come down to this material world. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 241, Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kuru nandana bahushakya hinantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Those who are on the spiritual path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. When a devotee is advancing towards spiritualization, his only aim is the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He does not care for any other material or spiritual activity. King Puranjana represents the ordinary living entity, and the woman represents the ordinary living entity's intelligence. Combined, the living entity enjoys his material senses, and the intelligence supplies all paraphernalia for his enjoyment. As soon as he enters the human form, the living entity is entrapped by a family tradition, nationality, customs, etc. These are all supplied by the Maya of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, the living entity under the bodily conception of life utilizes his intelligence to his best capacity in order to satisfy his senses. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Omagyanatimirandasya Karanjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasma Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Beg the blessings of everyone to be able to speak on the Bhagavatam. In this section, we are hearing how the living entity has different associates. Those associates are the senses, the mind, the intelligence. They are what we use to navigate around this material world. Here, the woman is an allegorical example of the intelligence, who, as we hear, intelligence is the next door neighbor of the soul. So there's one supreme living entity, Nityo Nityanam, Chaitanas Chaitananam, Eko Bahunam, Yo Vidadati Kaman. And then there are many other subordinate jivas who are also eternal. And that one supreme living entity is supplying the necessities for everyone else. So he supplies the necessities by giving everything in the form of, you can say, objects, air to breathe, sunlight, food to eat, and so forth. But more so, the Supreme Living Entity sits within the heart of the jiva and supplies intelligence. And in this way, he supplies the necessary knowledge to fulfill desires. Without the sanction of the Supersoul, no desire can be fulfilled. In the Bhagavad Gita 5th chapter, text 15, an elaborate purport describes by Srila Prabhupada how the living entity actually has no potency to fulfill his own desires. He's too small. So he's dependent in all circumstances on the potency of the Supreme Lord. There's another very beautiful verse in the second canto of the Bhagavatam. Bhagavan sarvabhuteshu lakshanai swatmano hari drishrai buddhya dibir drishtrai lakshmanai anumapakai. That the living entity, he's seated in the body, and next to him is the super soul. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is seated within everybody's heart as a super soul, and this fact is perceived and hypothesized by the living entity's ability to take instruction from the intelligence. In other words, by noticing that we are always taking guidance from our intelligence, we can perceive that there is another person seated within our heart. Prabhupada there in that purport describes that it's a superior dictation coming from within that directs us to act in this world. So again, we have no ability to fulfill our own desires. We are dependent on that, on the Supersoul, and the Supersoul gives intelligence according to our karma. So we see in the material world, those who have very strong intelligence, they're able to achieve a lot of things. Everybody may have desire, but they may not be getting sufficient intelligence to fulfill those desires. So some who have the karma, the super soul gives them the ability to maneuver in the material world, to arrange things, to orchestrate the material energy in a way by which they can advance materially. So they become very successful, they become very rich, very influential, very popular. They may write things like how to win friends and influence people because they figured that out by their intelligence. They may also write things like how to think and grow rich because also they figured that out by their intelligence, how to make money in this world. So they become very successful. And those who are not so much successful, they get a different kinds of intelligence according to the super soul within their heart. So material intelligence is a certain kind. Primarily, it falls into the category of ahara, nidya, bahuna, Baya maitunam cha. How to eat, how to sleep, how to have sex life, how to defend. And most people they will mm, be identified as intelligent by how much money they have. I believe this is one of the categories that are given in the 12th canto of the Bhagavatam of the age of Kali. Our Prophet also once gave a small story, you can say, of two men who were hanging out together, and one asked the other, "How intelligent are you? Are you intelligent?" So the other was thinking for a little while, and then he put his hand in his pocket, rummaging around a little bit. And he pulled out some money, and he looked at it, and he said, "Yes, I must be very intelligent because I have some money in my pocket." Uh, So, of course, this is not the real sign of intelligence. The Bhagavatam in the first canto, Tasyaiva heto prayateta kovido, nalabhyate yad brahmatam uparyada, talabhyate dukkhavat anyata sukham, kalena sarvatra gabira ramhasa. Those who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined will endeavor only for that purposeful end, which is not attainable by wandering to the highest planets in the universe, Brahmaloka, down to the lowest Patala. Uh, as far as happiness derived from the senses is concerned, that can be achieved automatically in due course, just as in due course we achieve miseries, although we do not desire them. So real intelligence is not to work very hard, waste the human form of life. As Prabhupada often would say, what are they doing with their time? They're working all day long, and then they're commuting. For the rest of the time that they don't have at work, they're stuck in traffic. And all these cars are moving back and forth all day long. People are moving, they're active in so many ways, but what is the result of their activity? Material progress, which in a sense is not progress at all, because it binds us to the ocean of birth and death. So it's important to understand that yes, a person is getting intelligence, but what kind of intelligence is really worthwhile? That has to be discerned. So real intelligence is different. Real intelligence, as we know, is to understand I am not this body. This is the beginning. To understand the difference between material and spiritual and the source of both of these. As we know, Sanatana Goswami, he was very influential, and when he first met Mahaprabhu, the first thing he told him, Ke ami ke amoy, jare tapa troy. People say I'm very learned, I have so much wealth, I can speak so many languages, I'm very influential, but I don't know who I am and why am I suffering? So he understood what is real intelligence. Real intelligence is to understand the soul and to understand how to extricate ourselves out of the material world. So that intelligence is coming from Krishna himself. In that same purport to the Bhagavad Gita 5.15, Prabhupada describes that when a living entity desires Krishna, Krishna encourages them in that way and gives them sufficient intelligence how to come back to him. But when a living entity wants to be forgetful, the same Krishna within the heart, he gives them intelligence how to become more and more degraded. So then one may ask, why does the Supersoul do that? If he's everyone's well-wisher, Bhaktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarvabhutanam, I'm the friend of everyone. Why would the Supersoul give intelligence to a person to go down into a hellish existence? So there Prabhupada describes that if the Supersoul doesn't do that, then there is no meaning to free will. So he gives opportunity for everyone according to their desire and according to their karma once again. So again, real intelligence is how to become a devotee. Yagyai Sankirtanai Prayer, Yajanti Hi Sumedasaha. The Bhagavatam describes those who are sufficiently endowed with intelligence, they will worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, particularly in the age of Kali, by the process of Sankirtan. So we can see in our experience in devotional service how, yes, the devotees are very intelligent. When I first came along, I would hear the devotees speak. I actually came along through hearing, I never met a devotee. My friend, who we went to high school together, he gave me a book. He ordered it online and he became a devotee by reading it, and then he moved away to another city. So just before he left, he gave me a Bhagavad Gita, and he also told me to look up Radhanath Maharaj on YouTube. So I started watching Vrndavana Maharaj, and by pressing on related links, as people do, they organize social media in a way that you can spend as much time as possible on there. So luckily for me, I was spending a lot of time on there, but I was pressing on related links to watch other devotees. So I was watching Bhagavatam classes by Prahlada Maharaj, Radhanath Swami, and so many others, His Holiness Devamrita Maharaj as well. Although I could never pronounce the names, I was so eager to hear from them. And I thought, I've never heard anybody speak like this. The knowledge they are given, they're charismatic, they're humorous, they're down to earth, and they're so knowledgeable. And then after some years, I began to chant. I was just listening to classes every day like this. In those classes, I heard that devotees chant 16 rounds of the Maha Mantra, and it takes them 2 hours to do it. So I didn't have any chanting beads. So after some time, I decided that's it. I want to be a devotee. So I started to chant at home, but I would do it by the clock. I would look at my watch, and I would chant for 2 hours every day just by the clock. Of course, when I finally got beads, I realized I wasn't chanting 16 rounds because it took me much longer to chant 16 rounds on beads. So by the influence of just listening to the devotees, I became intrigued. And then finally, when I met the devotees in person, also I thought, these people, they just know how to do everything. As Prabhupada would say, a devotee should know a little about everything and a lot about one thing. That one thing is Krishna. Know everything about Krishna, but know a little bit about everything. So I remember I moved into the ashram in Wellington, and the devotee who was running the ashram there, he was just expert at everything, Mahavan Prabhu. He would play the music nicely. He would help us to learn how to cook. He would give amazing classes. And even if there's something broken in the house, he had this toolkit. He would fix everything. He would mow the lawn. And I thought, I've never met anybody like this. He just knows how to do everything. So I was very much impressed by how the devotees have such strong intelligence. And the reality is, in this material world, it's an ocean of faults, and it's a danger at every step. Padam padam yad vipadam natesham, the 10th canto describes. So to be able to maneuver in such a dangerous world also requires intelligence. Srila Prabhupada, he once said in a lecture, I believe, that if one has proper intelligence, he would be able to get out of all difficult situations in life by use of that proper intelligence. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he once also said that the path of a devotee is not a path of roses, rather it's a path of thorns. How is that? He said that every devotee should expect three things. They should expect personal inconvenience, they should expect scarcity of resources, and they should expect unforeseen obstacles to come along their way. So when all these things arise, we have to take intelligence to overcome them, and that intelligence comes primarily from Krishna. Krishna gives intelligence when he speaks. In one example, to Arjuna, he speaks to many other devotees. In the Bhagavatam, we hear he appears as Vishnu, and also in the 11th canto, he appears to Uddhava himself and gives him very elaborate teachings. So when we hear from Krishna directly, as Arjuna did when he was bewildered, Arpanya dosha pahata sabhava prachamidam tvam dharma samudacheta shishasteham sadimam tvam prapannam. I'm confused about my duty. I do not know what to do. In this situation, my dear Lord, I'm surrendering unto you. Please instruct me. Tell me what it is I should do. So when we come upon all these obstacles in life, scarcity of resources, inconveniences, then we turn to Krishna. How? We open the Bhagavad Gita, we open the Bhagavatam, and we find so many instructions and guidance how to pull ourselves out. So Srila Prabhupada was once giving a class, I believe at a university, and one devotee came to see him. He wasn't a devotee yet, just a newcomer. He went to see Prabhupada at the university. Prabhupada was speaking. And he was listening to Prabhupada, and then he saw Prabhupada was speaking in so many languages. Sometimes it was in English, sometimes it was something else. He couldn't figure out what it was. So it was difficult for him to understand everything in the lecture. But at the end, he came to a conclusion, and that conclusion was, we are all our bodies, but this Swami, he's not his body. Because Srila Prabhupada, throughout the lecture, he kept on repeating, you're not your body, you're not your body. So that's all he can really catch from the whole lecture. So he decided, okay, well, I need a little bit more. I'm attracted to the Swami, but I kind of can't figure out if I want to follow him or not. So he decided, I'll go ask him a question, and based on the answer he gives, I'll either become his follower or I won't. And the question that he thought of when he went up to Prabhupada, he said, if you see an old lady getting mugged on the street, what would you do? So Prabhupada, he didn't answer it directly. He said, there's going to be so many situations like this in life that will come upon you. And you will not know what to do. But if you read my books, you will find everything necessary for any circumstance that you may come upon in life. So this devotee became Mukunda Maharaj, and he liked that answer very much. That's why he followed. He became Srila Prabhupada's disciple. So by this pastime of Prabhupada, we can understand that by reading the Bhagavatam, we would be able to maneuver in this world very expertly. Arjuna himself, after Krishna left, he was bewildered. He was in anxiety. Maharaj Yudhisthira was trying to figure out something's different about Arjuna now. What is it? So Arjuna, he said, Desha kalarta yuktani hritapopasamani cha haranti smaratas chittam govinda vihitani me. Now my mind is attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and place. So yes, in every time and place, the Bhagavad Gita will help us to maneuver and to make progress to the ultimate goal of life, and even with practical things in this world, by taking Krishna's guidance, we will be benefited. So Krishna speaks directly, and after hearing from him, and applying his teachings, then one, in due course of time, may be able to hear the super soul. So, Jitatmana prashantasya paramatma samahita. When the mind is conquered, the super soul is reached. So as we all know, to hear the super soul is not very easy, which in other words implies conquering the mind is not very easy. So in the beginning, that super soul, he comes out externally as the spiritual master, the Chatya Guru. So therefore the Chaitanya Charitamrita says, for a sincere soul, Brahmanda Brahmate Konya Bhagyavan Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasadi Bhai Bhakti Lata Bij. When one is sincere, then the super soul directs them to a pure devotee who can give them directions how to live and how to execute the process of bhakti. So progressively in our association with a bona fide spiritual master, if we are sincere and we are inquisitive and we render service, then we will see that yes, this person is a manifestation of the super soul. He says just what you need to hear when you need it. Of course, we also have to be receptive to that instruction and guidance when we get it. But I can say from my experience throughout the years that more and more so I can see how yes, the spiritual master is the external manifestation of the Chaitya Guru. So this is a few ways how we can take guidance from Krishna himself to cultivate our intelligence in a strong way. And one thing that I was thinking is that also, although devotional service can give us some strong intelligence, we have to be careful not to become over-intelligent. And so what does that mean? It means that By intelligence, actually, we become more and more perceptive. We can perceive things happening around us, how to maneuver, and we can also perceive things in others a lot more clearly. We can perceive ourselves a lot more clearly as well. Before devotional service, we may not be able to see what's happening within our heart, within our mind. So we're able to see our heart a bit more clearly, and we're also able to see things in others a bit more clearly. But when we become a little bit too confident in our ability and our judgment, we begin to take everything that our intelligence or mind, which sometimes can be deceiving, if not often, as factual. And so one product of being over intelligent is one becomes inclined to fault finding. So fault finding is said to be an anartha that is born out of offenses. It's one of the most dangerous things. And so we always have to be careful about that. Srila Govinda Maharaj, he would often give the story of the wolf and the lamb. So the story is exemplifying how by intolerance and enviousness, one would be able to see faults everywhere. So the wolf was trying to figure out how to kill this lamb. They were drinking water in the river together. So he was thinking, somehow or other, I have to devour this lamb. And the lamb was not doing anything to him. So he was trying to think of a reason why to devour it. So he went to the lamb and he said, can't you see I'm drinking water here and you're making the river muddy for me? So this is a reason why I should devour you. So the lamb, he said, how am I doing that? You're drinking water upstream and I'm drinking water downstream. So how can I make the water muddy for you? So the wolf said, well, anyway, you called me ill names about a year ago. Why'd you do that? So the lamb said, I was only born 3 months ago. A year ago, I wasn't even here. So the wolf said, it must have been your mother. Your mother must have called me bad names. Said, anyways, never mind. I'm just gonna eat you anyway. So he used to tell the story very humorously, better than I can tell it, and exemplifying that if we want to find fault, we will do it this way, that way, any other way. And the conclusion of finding the fault is that just see, I am better than you. It's the reality is another thing is that the person who finds faults usually has more faults than the other. The example is of the sieve finding fault with the needle. The sieve goes to the needle and he says, needle, look, you have a hole in your back. But then the needle says, you have so many other holes. Why are you focusing on my little hole? But the sieve finds fault with the needle. So finding fault with devotees is very dangerous. Not to speak of finding fault with senior devotees. There's examples also of persons who end up criticizing and correcting those seen devotees who are older than them, and even the guru. Srila Prabhupada, many of his, or not many, but a handful of his disciples also went astray because they thought they found somebody greater than the spiritual master. They would go to Radhakund, which Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said many of these persons living there are actually living in Narakakund. And they would take guidance from them and then reject their spiritual master. One devotee went to Prabhupada and he said, oh, Prabhupada, can you please give me your blessings so I can find another guru? And Prabhupada said, I give you my blessings to go to hell. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also, he had one disciple who was extremely intelligent. He was he was known to be a Shrutidar. Everything he heard, he would remember it verbatim. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati would have him sit right next to him while he gave class, and he would have him quote verses whenever he spoke. He also made him the chief editor of all the publications coming from the Gaudiya Math. So this devotee was very much respected, and clearly he wasn't an ordinary person. He was very much empowered. After Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also left, without naming this devotee, he was elevated to the post of Acharya because all the devotees did not follow Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's recommendation and instruction to form a governing body as Srila Prabhupada did. So they thought we'll appoint him to become the new Acharya. So in those times, this devotee, he became over intelligent, and he began to criticize even Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, some of his teachings. And he told some of his disciples that you can no longer read any of these Gaudiya Math literatures. He criticized many of the works of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and he also told them to go take initiation elsewhere because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's initiation was faulty. So this devotee, by his over-intelligence, he began to think, I am better than the guru. I can create my own sampradaya. I can do my own thing. And the result was that he fell down. He left his sannyas ashram, which is classified as a vasanti, one who eats his own vomit. So he left sannyas. He went and ate his own vomit. He became a Babaji in Vrindavan, and he married a very well-known person who was known to be very promiscuous. Basically, she was known to be like a prostitute in that time. And he had a child with her. And when the child was, it's a sad story, but it's a reality. When the child was about 10 years old, this wife of his, she was cheating with another person. And her son, he caught her and he told her, you can't have this man here. He's not my father. So she became angry and she ended up killing her son. And finally, this devotee, who used to be so exalted, he decided, this is horrific. I married a lady who was unchaste. She killed my son. How horrible is my life? And he committed suicide. So the result of criticizing the guru, the aparad of doing that, I mean, one thing is to fall down, but that's not a big deal. But to criticize the guru and commit aparads in that way will result in the greatest fall down. So these are a few things we can take about cultivation of intelligence. And one important thing of today is that it's in our Vaishnav calendar, there are a few appearances. I'll just pull up the calendar here. We have the appearance today of Pundarik Vidyanidhi. Pundarik Vidyanidhi, as we know, was a very advanced and intimate associate of Mahaprabhu. He was Vrishabhanu in Krishna Lila, the father of Srimati Radharani. And therefore Mahaprabhu often would call him father. He was known to be a very opulent devotee. The very famous pastime of Gadadhar Pandit asking Mahaprabhu, I want to hear something about Krishna. Mahaprabhu told him to go hear from Vidyanidhi. So Gadadhar went. But upon arriving, he saw that Pundarik was sitting on a very fancy cushion. He had people fanning him. His hair was slicked back. He had two spitins. He was chewing betel nut. Sometimes it's described that Pundarik would wear rings on every finger of his hand. So Gadadhar, upon seeing this, he became doubtful and he left. The next day, Mahaprabhu asked him, did you hear from Vidyanidhi? He said no, and then Mahaprabhu understood. So he sent him back again. And when he went there, this time, he started to quote different pastimes of Krishna, and he quoted a verse, Aho Bakiyam Stanakala Kutam Kambadayadum Sharanam Vrajema. How merciful is Krishna? He gave liberation even to Putana. I hope this noise is not distracting. Somebody is mowing the lawn next door. So Gadadhar, Pundarik Vidyanidhi, upon hearing this verse about how merciful Krishna is, immediately he fell off his dais. He manifested ecstatic symptoms, and Gadadhar Pandit, he realized this is not an ordinary person. He's a pure devotee. And so to counteract that offense within the mind, Gadadhar took initiation from Pundarik Vidyanidhi. Vidyanidhi also, the famous pastime of when Jagannath, the first day of winter, Odana Shasti, Jagannath is dressed in starch cloth in the Jagannath temple. And traditionally, to wear a starch cloth is considered impure. So Mahaprabhu and all his associates, they observed the festival. And Vidyanidhi, after leaving, he was good friends with Swarup Damodar. So he told Swarup, I saw that they're dressing Jagannath in starch cloth. Why are they doing this? This is wrong. And actually, upon seeing this, Vidyanidhi, his mind became a little bit hateful, resentful. How could they do like that? So he confided in Swarup Damodar. Damodar told him, don't worry, nothing, not a blade of grass moves without the sanction of the Lord. So obviously, if this is happening, Jagannath wants it to be. So he went to sleep that night, and in his dream, Vidyanidhi had a dream of Jagannath and Baladev, and they were slapping him on both cheeks. Jagannath would slap the right cheek, Baladev would slap on the left, and they went like this for a very long time, slapping him back and forth and correcting him. How dare you criticize our servants? So upon waking, Vidyanidhi had both of his cheeks swollen, and he felt very fortunate that the Lord would appear to him in a dream and correct him like this. And in the morning, Swarup Damodar came and he said, why are you still inside? The sunlight has already risen. Vidyanidhi told him, I can't come outside because just see, my cheeks are so swollen. I have to wait until they go down, then I will be able to show my face. And Swarup also was very pleased that his friend was able to have an interaction with Jagannath in this way. Another appearance of today is Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, who we know is the custodian of Radha Kund. He was one of the 6 disciples, primary of Lord Chaitanya. And there are many wonderful instances about his life. He was a dear associate of Srimati Radharani. He was a Manjari, Rati Manjari in his Swarup. And he would serve Radha Govinda in his mind. His bhajan was very powerful. It said that his sadhana was like lines in stone. And he would eat very little. It's described that he would just have a cup of buttermilk a day. And so in his meditations, in his mind, one time he offered some sweet rice to the Lord. The Lord had it and was distributing it to everyone. And he also got some of the remnants of the Lord after offering it, and he ate. And in his ecstasy, he ate a little bit too much. This is all in his Manasa Puja. And so upon finishing his puja, he had some ailment in his body. And so the devotees brought some physicians to see him. The physicians said, oh, he must have had some very heavy preparation, probably a mixture of milk and rice. And upon examining him, the devotees thought, how could that be? Because he barely eats anything. So Raghunath Das Goswami told them, yes, it's true. In my puja, I offered this to the Lord and I ate. And the devotees were in awe that his worship of the Lord was so potent that even though it happened within his mind, it's manifesting in his physical symptoms. Raghunath Das Goswami also was one time, his father and his uncle, Govardhan Majumdar and Hiranya Majumdar, they were tax collectors, and they were supposed to collect 2 million gold coins a month, I believe. And from those 2 million, they were supposed to give 1,500,000 to the government, but instead they were giving 1,200,000 and they were keeping 700,000. So this tax collector, he became a little bit envious, and he decided, I have to do something about this. So he went to get them, to arrest them. But they had left, and the only person he can find was Raghunath Das Goswami. So he arrested Raghunath Das, and every day he would keep him, he would question and interrogate him, and he would try to get him to bring back his father and his uncle. So after doing this for a while, sometimes he would want to beat Raghunath Das Goswami, but he would see his very beautiful face and his sweet exchanges and his humility, and he wouldn't be able to. So he would just kind of push him a little bit, and then he would leave. So then finally, after some days, Raghunath Das, he began to speak very sweetly to this tax collector. And he told him, yourself, my uncle, and my father, you're actually like brothers. And brothers, sometimes they fight. And the next day, they sit very welcomingly together with love and affection, and they speak kind words to one another. So because you have this intimate relationship with my father and uncle, you are like my father, and it's not very proper for a father to correct his son like this. So you should probably let me go. And above all, you're a saintly Muslim, and you're able to act on a platform of compassion. So in this way, he convinced this government worker to let him go. And with tears in his eyes, he let Raghunath Das Goswami go. And he told him, you just arrange a meeting with your father and myself, and we can settle the whole situation. So this pastime is exemplified, and Prabhupada describes in there how Raghunath Das, with very sharp intelligence, he was able to maneuver and get himself out of the situation. And there's a few others. Today is Vishnu Priya Devi Dasi's appearance, who was the second wife of Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu got married again by the desire of Mother Sachi. And shortly after marrying Vishnu Priya, Mahaprabhu took sannyas. So she didn't have much association with Mahaprabhu. And in her separation, she would chant her japa. And after every round, or after every mantra, she would take a grain of rice. She would put it in a pile. And about midday, after chanting her rounds, she would cook that much of rice, the grains that she had collected. She would offer that to Mahaprabhu. She had the first deity ever installed of Mahaprabhu, Dameshwar, who is still residing in Navadvip. And she would offer that. She lived very austerely in separation of Mahaprabhu. So there are a few others. I don't think we have time to go through, but there is Raghunarananda Thakur, his appearance. Vishwanath Chakravarti, who we sing the song written by him every morning, Guru Vastakam. He was very influential in Srila Prabhupada's life. Prabhupada dedicated the whole Bhagavad Gita to him, and he said that his commentary on Vyavasayatmaka Buddhi Ekaha Kurunandana, that commentary had influenced and propelled Srila Prabhupada to continue the mission and follow Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's desire for him to preach in the English language. So anyway, we can take the time today to remember these devotees and to engage in devotional service. So thank you anyway. Thank you everyone for giving me the opportunity to speak. And if anyone has any comments or questions, we can take that now. Okay, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi.
Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhaya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo